Hello everyone, my name is Xianda Ren, and I'm currently a student on the MA Advanced Music Technology program. Before I begin, let me briefly introduce myself. I was born in Jiangsu, China, and graduated from Beijing University of Post and Telecommunication in 2019 with a bachelor degree in English literature. After graduation, I pursued professional music training and have developed skills in guitar, keyboard, and harmonica performance, as well as in modern music production and audio technology. So my background in both Western music comment and contemporary audio practice has shaped my interest in how institutional structures such as music award influence artist value and public perception. Over the past decade, both the Grammy Award and the Brit Award have introduced explicit diversity initiatives. These policies are presented as progressive reforms aimed at increasing representation across gender, race, and other identity categories. However, a growing number of critics argue that this measure risks prioritizing demographic target over the artistic merit, potentially undermining the cultural authority and public trust in music award. This leads me to my research question: the tension between diversity quotas and artistic excellence in contemporary music award. Do the Grammy and the Brit Award selection mechanism undermine public trust? In this presentation, I will explain this tension through a mixed method pilot study combining secondary data analysis with critical discourse analysis. I will then reflect on how this pilot study informs my larger summer project. To help explain my research question, I will journey on 4 key academic sources that have shaped the way I approach this topic. First, Norman's book Language and Power from 2015. Norman's main idea is that language is not just a neutral way to describe reality. It actually helps to create and maintain power relations. I use his 3D model of discourse analysis to look closely at how the Grammy and the Brit Award use the phrase inclusive excellence in their official statements. On the surface, the phrase makes diversity sound very positive and forward-thinking. But when I analyze it more carefully, I can see that it actually hides the real tension between musical quality and demographic representation, which is basically diversity quotas. This framework is very useful for me because it helps me understand how institutions use language to shape public opinion. Second, Mark Banks in his 2022 book Creative Justice argued that many diversity policies in the creative industries are largely symbolic. They look good on paper and makes organizations appear progressive, but they often don't bring real change to who actually hold power. This idea is very important for my pilot study. I test this claim by looking at the actual nomination number from the Grammy Award between 2019 to 2025 to see whether the increase in diversity has really changed the artistic recognition or if it remains mostly for show. Third, Debb's work on culture policy from 2014 is also very relevant. He points out that there is often a tension between excellence and equality in culture institutions. When organizations put too much emphasis on representation and diversity, it can lead to decline in public trust in artistic standards. This directly supports the main argument of my research, which is diversity quotas may be damaging the perceived fairness and legitimacy of major music awards. Finally, I also draw on Simon's book, Richard Mania from 2011 and Simon Faith's Performing Rates from 1996. Simon shows that a lot of popular music today is very focused on ritual styles, old sound, and revivals. He suggests that audiences are tired of constant demand for novelty and progress. Faith argues that listeners usually judge music based on emotional authenticity and whether it feels real to them, rather than based on political correct or diversity quotas. Together, these two thoughts give me strong evidence that many listeners may actually care more about artistic quality and timeless music than about enforced demographic representation. This is a key point that supports my critique of current diversity policies. These four sources together give me a solid foundation for my pilot study, which I will describe in the next part. Now, I'd like to explain the methodology I used for my pilot study. I chose a mixed method approach, combining secondary data analysis with critical discourse analysis. This means I used both quantitative and qualitative techniques together. I think this combination is very suitable for my research question because it allows me to look at the issue from two different angles at the same time. Let me explain why I made this choice. First, why mixed method? Patricia Levy, in her 2022 book, Research Design, argues that quantitative data give us breadth. It shows us the big picture and general trends, while qualitative analysis gives us depth. It helps us understand the meaning and the stories behind the numbers. For my study, I needed both. I wanted to measure how much diversity has actually increased in the awards. That is the quantitative part. And at the same time, I want to understand how this increase is being talked about in the media and in official statement. That is the qualitative part. Using both together give me a much richer and more complete picture than using just one method alone. Second, why did I use secondary data? The main reason is practicality and reliability. Official reports like the Grammy Diversity and Inclusion Report from 2021 to 2025 and the nomination list are publicly available and come directly from the award organization themselves. The data is already connected and organized, so I didn't need to design survey or recruit participants at this stage. It also means my findings are based on official, verifiable number rather than my own small sample. Third, why critical discourse analysis? I use a framework from Norman and Van Dyck to analyze language in official statements and media articles. Norman's model helped me to see how words like inclusive excellence are used to shape power relations, while Van Dyck's ideological square helped me understand how media tests often present diversity supporters positively and critics negatively. This approach is very useful because it allows me to uncover how language can hide or reveal the real tension between artistic merit and diversity qualities, something that pure number alone can't show. So, above all, this mixed method design using secondary data for the numbers and critical discourse analysis for the language gives me both the evidence and the deeper interpretation I need to answer my research question properly. Now let me describe what I actually did in my pilot study. I used a mixed method design with two main strands, a quantitative strand and a qualitative strand. In the qualitative strand, I analyzed official nomination data from the Grammy Award and the Brit Award between 2019 and 2025. That's a 7-year period. I tracked diversity metrics, focusing especially on the proportion of dominance from underrepresented racials and ethnic group. I also compared this diversity number with professional review sources from sources like Metacritic and Pitchfork to see if there was any relationship between increased diversity and artistic reception. In the qualitative strand, I conducted a critical discourse analysis of media coverage from 2022 to 2025. I looked at more than 20 articles from major music and news outlets, as well as official statements released by the Grammy and the Brit Awards themselves. I also examined audience comments on social media platforms such as X and Reddit to understand how original listeners were reacting to these diversity initiatives. Okay, next I will explain how the annotated bibliography connects with research question. The design of this pilot study were directly informed and shaped by all the literature I reviewed in my annotated bibliography. Faircloug's 3D module of discourse analysis, together with Van Dyck's ideological square and Cordray and Heap's work on mediated reality, guided my qualitative strand. This framework helped me explaining how official statements and media texts construct inclusive excellence as a progressive narrative while masking the real tension between artistic merit and demographic representation. Banks' critique of symbolic diversity or Brain's analysis of the excellent equity tension make Ruby's discussion of neoliberal co-option of diversity initiatives, Saha's work on racialized branding, and Hizmund Huq's understanding of awards as sites of symbolic power connective inform my quantitative analysis. They push me to test whether the increase in diversity metrics from 2019 to 2025 actually lead to substantive change or remain largely performative. Leaf's guidance on mixed method design and Smith and Dean's interactive cyclic model provided the methodological foundation for combining secondary data analysis with critical discourse analysis. The official Grammy Diversity Report 2021 to 2025 served as my core qualitative dataset, while Ronald, Rachel Malia, and Fifth Performing raised directly my attention to Rachel and the Lofi music communities. Their emphasis on authenticity and listening value offered a valuable contrast to institutional diversity narratives and helped me interpret audience skepticism. Together, these 13 sources gave me both the theoretical tools and the practical direction to design a pilot study that could critically examine the gap between diversity policy and public trust. So how does this pilot study relate to my larger summer project? The pilot study helped me identify a clear public trust crisis and a strong discursive polarization around diversity in music award. I can expand the discourse analysis and add a longer historical comparison, look back from 2010 to 2025 to better understand the long-term impact of these diversity policies on the cultural authority of music award. Importantly, the mixed method approach I developed in the pilot study, which is combining secondary data analysis with critical discourse analysis, will remain very useful for my future work. It gives me a flexible framework that I can adapt to different topics. Whether I continue with award or performance or technology impacts or move to any other area in my graduation project. This approach helps me find both solid evidence and deeper meanings, which I believe will be valuable no matter what direction my final project takes. In the future, for my larger summer project, I plan to build on the mixed method approach I developed in the pilot study, even though my final graduation project might not continue exactly on the topic of diversity quartets in music award. The method I have used here are very transferable and will be extremely useful no matter what direction I choose. First, I plan to conduct semi-structured interviews. This is a qualitative method. I will interview some people relevant to my project. The goal is to explore their real experience and personal perceptions. This will give me deeper, more personal insights than numbers alone can provide. Second, I will use online questionnaires. This is mainly a quantitative method. I want to collect broader data from a large group of people. This will help me see the big picture and identify common patterns across different groups. Third, I'm considering practice-based research. This is a qualitative and creative approach. I may produce music, curate playlists, or create multimedia works. This allows me to explore the topic not only through analysis but also through creative practice. Finally, I will continue to use secondary data analysis combined with critical discourse analysis. This mixed method approach proved very effective in the pilot study, and I want to keep using it to track long-term change and analyze how language shapes public understanding. In short, these four methods, interview, questionnaires, practice-based research, and secondary data with discourse analysis, give me a flexible and powerful toolkit. They allow me to combine solid evidence with deeper interpretation, and they can be adapted to many different topics in my graduation project. Finally, let me share my assessment of pilot study results and what I think this research could mean for the field. The findings from my pilot study are quite striking. First, the data shows that the proportion of Grammy nominees from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups rose significantly from 34% in 2019 to 55% in 2025. However, this increase happened at the same time as a clear rise in negative media comment about quarter politics. Many articles and online discussions express concern that sacrificed in order to meet diversity targets. Second, I found strong polarization in public discourse. On social media, some people strongly support the diversity initiative and see them as long overdue progress, but many others argue that the awards are losing credibility and that artistic quality is no longer the main criterion for selection. Third, I noticed something interesting when looking at Rachel and Lofi music communities. A lot of listeners in these spaces show a strong preference for authenticity and timeless quality rather than demographic representation. This shows that a significant part of audience may actually care more about musical excellence than about enforced diversity quotas. So, what does this all mean? I believe this research has important implications. It contributes to ongoing debates about merit, representation, and institutional legitimacy in the creative industries. More importantly, it provides real evidence that diversity policy, while well-intentioned, may actually be eroding public trust in music awards. This finding has practical implications for future policy makers, award organizations, and artists who are trying to navigate an increasingly policy industry. This finding has particular implications for future policymakers, award organizations, and artists who are trying to navigate an increasingly politicized industry. In the end, my pilot study shows that there is a real tension between diversity goals and the artistic standards, and that ignoring this tension could damage the cultural authority of one of the music industry's most important institutions. Okay, that's all of my presentation. Thank you for watching. See you.